Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to the live stream. Uh, two live streams, 2 weeks in a row. It's pretty rare, but I think from now I'm going to be doing live streams a bit more often. Last week we did a CCNP stream, looked at some more advanced VTP stuff, but today we're going in a totally different direction. So today we are going to look at Checkpoint. Checkpoint is a industry leader in the field of cybersecurity, firewalls, things like that. So this is going to be a really interesting stream, I'm sure. But first, before we get right into it, just let me know where you're watching from. We usually have a very international audience. So yeah, let me know in the chat, where are you watching from? And for those of you wondering, I am streaming from Japan, Tokyo area. Nice. Queens, New York, Canada, Algeria. Two people from Algeria. Awesome. Azerbaijan. Awesome. Austin, Texas, UK. Got some Canadians. Algeria again. Massachusetts. London, US. Okay, awesome. So, as usual, a very international audience. It's great. So yeah, let's get into Checkpoint. So, the reason that we decided to do this Checkpoint stream is that I'm actually going to be making a series of Checkpoint videos on my channel soon. And I shared that information, and my friend, the Packet Thrower, he mentioned that he's worked with Checkpoint and has been working with Checkpoint a lot recently. So he's going to be showing me and showing you the basics of Checkpoint. So without any further ado, let's get Mr. Donald, the Packet Thrower, on. Hey, you're on. Hello, hello. How are things? Living the dream? Yeah, for sure. The network engineer dream. So today, yeah, it's the best. It's the best. At least the pay is good, or it can be. Sometimes. Sometimes. All right, so what are you going to be showing us today in your Fortinet shirt? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's got to be the wrong band. Yeah. Okay, 1 second. Pause. Okay, you can talk again. It said they weren't hearing you. One more time.
Okay. Did they hear nothing or just that part?
Okay, they should be able to hear you now.
Okay. What was the last thing they heard?
They heard just me. So
Oh.
I'll get back to that again.
Hi.
So what are you going to be showing us today?
Well,
Hi, Donald.
Okay. Second time. Basically, since you seem to be playing with Checkpoint a lot, I figured that we'd walk through the basics of some Checkpoint and play around with some of the features it has, and probably play around some automation side too, because that's the kind of thing I like doing, and
Cool.
should be fun.
Awesome. Sounds good. Yep, and we got confirmation they can hear you now. So all right, all good. All right,
Awesome.
so if you're ready, we can jump right into it. If you want to get started.
Sure.
Sure.
All right, so let's just boomer our way through this. So to share my screen, I probably got to press a button.
Probably.
Let's see here. Share screen, that might be the button, eh?
Sounds like it.
There. Do we see a fancy checkpoint?
Yes, we do. Very fancy.
Okay, so Checkpoint is a fairly popular security solution. It is made by some fellows in Israel there, and basically Israel uses it for basically all their military and intelligence defense in the government. So they take the security very seriously over there. And it is a pretty solid firewall. Architecturally, it is a little bit different from something like Palo Alto or Cisco Firepower, because they actually clearly separate the routing side and the firewall side, as opposed to putting them all together in one appliance.
Okay, interesting.
So what you typically have is there is a routing component that is called Gaia. And this is basically their secure operating system that does all the routing functionality. And then you kind of have the firewall bolted on the side of it. And then this handles all your security there. So if you remember the early days of Cisco Firepower, they actually did the same thing there, where instead of Gaia, it was the ASA, and then they had the Firepower module
Right,
added
right.
into there, and
Yeah.
they moved to a unified image. So Checkpoint, they just never got to the phase of doing the unified image for whatever reason, but the separation does seem to work for them.
Are there pros and cons to that, to having them unified or separated?
It's more just the fact that instead of being able to configure everything in here, we have to pull up a web browser if we want to set up the interfaces and set up the routing and that kind of stuff.
Okay, right, right.
So what I will do is quickly just show you the website. So I find my buttons. Ready. Like that, and we bring this down.
Now, something some of my viewers might notice is that he's not using a CLI, but rather a GUI. And that is common in firewalls in general, to use the graphical user interface instead of the CLI.
Yeah, a lot of the vendors, they either have a really poorly thought out CLI, or it's they don't have one at all. Like Checkpoint, they don't really have a CLI. Cisco doesn't have a CLI. And really, if you want to go that way, they're trying to push you towards automation instead.
Okay, got it.
And what you find is when you have like really complex rules, or you have like really scary command lines anyway, so it's probably not that bad of a trade-off at the end of the day. But yeah, if you really love CLI, then security might not be your field, because we love GUIs.
Yep, yep.
So this is Gaia in all its glory. So what it gives you is basically a nice little summary of all the various blades and Checkpoint. We'll talk about what they are when we get there. And you can also see some summaries. I already have some pre-configuration done, so we don't need to worry about what is here. But we will look at the network interfaces. So the first thing you would want to do when you set up Checkpoint is you'd have to make sure you put the right IP addresses so you can access everything. And then, so what I've done here is I've added a management interface. I've created a WAN interface so that we can simulate the internet. We have a transit interface so we can play with some routing when we get there. This, I don't know why I made this, but apparently I was testing something. And this is a cluster link so that we can run to firewalls as a pair for redundancy, which is typically what you would do when you deploy these kind of things. You can also do some other stuff here. You can run DHCP if you really want to. Disclaimer, never run DHCP on your firewall. It's really only if you're a really tiny branch, and frankly, if you're a tiny branch, you probably can't afford Checkpoint anyway, so Checkpoint is not cheap, and you can probably afford a Windows DHCP server. You got your static routes where you can do your typical routing stuff. You can also configure things like routing. So you can set your OSPF, you can set your BGP. You can do more advanced things if you really want to there, but usually you don't get too crazy on a firewall. You can also push upgrades from here. So basically, as new versions of Checkpoint come out, we can automatically install them. And there's also some automation stuff that we can do to make this a little bit faster. And that's basically all we need to look at Gaia at the moment. I will point out the cloning group, which is more of an advanced feature. And what this does is it lets you replicate the common settings on this Gaia over to another firewall. So if we're running a cluster and we want to set up like NTP, for example, we can just have it clone to the other side rather than have to set up it on both sides there. So just reduces the configuration mistakes.
Yep, yep.
So that is Gaia. I also went ahead and added the firewalls already and created the clusters there just so we save some time. And what we need to do is, first of all, we'll just look at the management center. So the management center, we don't need to change too much, at least on basic stuff there, but this is where we basically do all our management in Checkpoint. Unlike other vendors like Palo Alto, you must use a management center to push things there. You can't just do things in the standalone mode. So that is one downside against Checkpoint, but the other side is it kind of forces some nice consistent configuration. So a bit of a trade-off there. You can also pick all kinds of shiny colors if you really want to customize the look and feel for you.
Awesome. That's a bonus
If
feature.
you're feeling purple or violet.
Violet red.
Yeah.
Which color are you feeling? Going
I
violet
feel
red?
violet red.
Nice.
That's important. So if we pick this, we can color there. And while it does look pretty and kind of reminds me of crayons, this is useful just for grouping objects together, just so you can look at a glance of if you have different clients or different sites there. You can see you can color code them, say one's blue, one's red, and so on. And then you don't need to worry about any confusion. As much anyway. I mean, if you're colorblind, I don't think it's going to help you, but
Yeah, that actually is a pretty nice feature. Makes things easier to look at.
so we don't need to change too much here. We by default, we're always going to have the network policy management. You can add a second one if you want redundancy. Endpoint management is if you want to do things like whole disk encryption on your endpoints and 802.1x, that kind of stuff. You can also make sure that we can tie this with a domain controller. And what this is going to do is it's going to join my Active Directory and it's going to pull logs. So when we generate traffic there, if I'm signed in as an Active Directory user, it's just going to say, hey, it's Donald, and carry it forward rather than having to do some correlation on the back end. So it's a nice feature. I'm just going to enter my domain info. And in a perfect world, ooh, look at that, it worked the first time.
Wow, that's rare on a stream. As I demonstrated earlier, things don't usually go well the first time live.
I had a bit of a disaster earlier when I was teaching a class and the lab did not cooperate at all today. But anyway, so that is set up. That's all we need to do. There's some legacy features here. Compliance is useful if you want to enforce change management. So you can make it so that you can stage changes there, but the boss needs to approve it, and then it gets pushed to the server. And Smart Event, this is really for if you want to treat Checkpoint more as a SIEM and react to a bunch of events going on in your firewall network, but we won't bother with that. So that is the management center side. We also have the gateway side. Let's pick a color. This is the most important part. How about blue? So here is where we choose what is available or on the firewall. So we see firewall is on by default, and you would typically never turn this off. I don't think it lets you turn. Oh, it does.
Oh, it does. Nice.
There's a time there where it didn't. You can enable VPNs, and this is basically how we'll do site-to-site stuff when we get there, so I'll just go ahead and check that. We can do mobile access there, and this is basically if you want to use like the newer VPN technology, so if you want to connect to your phones or that kind of thing, you can see it's going to walk you through a wizard of how it's going to work. We're not bother with that. You can do application control, so this is when you want to block things like Facebook, or you want to prevent Facebook games. And that should be good enough. There, I lost my train of thought entirely there. As for when you want to block applications, I don't know why I said it's good enough, but you're doing great, Jeremy. URL filtering. So this is pretty standard in any firewall nowadays. So if you want to block naughty sites or just enforce productivity, you can block the URLs you don't want. Identity awareness, we just saw that. So basically, we connect the firewall to that too. So I'll check the same box. And you can see it's remembering my ID information. So we're just going to click this and hopefully. It worked so good the first time. The reason for that is because I don't have routing set up, so I can't reach my domain controller.
Okay.
Just cancel that. And we'll come back to that later if we care. We can also do a QoS, pretty standard. You notice that all the routing stuff is not controlled from here because that's on Gaia.
Right.
And then we can do monitoring, which basically just gives us some traffic information. DLP, it's more of an advanced feature, but that's where you can make sure that people can't take your intellectual property in the company and send it out for the firewall, at least not easily. And anti-spam, that basically is your email security. So what you do is once you figure out what you want on your firewall, and in this case, I already generated my cluster there just to save it some time. You then need to define what your actual topology is so that it knows, so anti-spoofing can happen. Because the idea is that you don't want to have your private IPs being accessible from the WAN there, because that's a pretty common attack if you look at like DOS and those kind of things. So what we do here is we see we have the 10.13 network and we have the 10.101 network as my LAN. So what we're basically saying to the firewall is my LAN interface, I'm expecting this subnet right now. And this is my internet. So we do not want to be able to see traffic source from this on this side of the house. So we're just going to basically set up where the networks live, and then Checkpoint is going to block this. And I can guarantee you, if you ever have a problem with Checkpoint, it is anti-spoofing. It doesn't matter if the logs say it is anti-spoofing. It will break. It will lose sleep over this feature. You can't turn it off. Sorry.
Oh, can't turn it off.
Well, you can, but it yells at you, and it's a real pain. But what happens is that you have to make sure that all your subnets are updated there. So if I add 251 in here, you have to make sure you add it to the proper group, and otherwise it gets blocked. And
Okay, right.
traffic goes in the wrong interface. I've spent quite a few times troubleshooting anti-spoofing there, and sometimes the logs aren't as helpful as you would expect them to be. So that's my rent. So anyway, what you do is, for example, external, we would just say, hey, this is my external network, and we're just going to classify this as the internet. And then for other sites like my internal network here, we can go ahead and say this is this network. If I modify it, I can say that we are defined by the subnet mask, so basically anything on the subnet. I can also, depending on some situations, have it follow the routing table. And I can also create groups that will basically have all my networks in it, and then we can go forward from there. So right now, let's keep it simple and say network mask. And that should be good enough. So that's basically the setup of what we need to do. We don't care about that right now. So this is our rule base. So right now I just have a cleanup rule, and I'm accepting all traffic because this is a lab and I'm lazy. But what you should do is you should start building out your rule base there so that only the expected traffic can talk to you. So we can add section titles to clean this up. So we can go ahead and say this is firewall traffic. And then we can add another section title here. And we'll call this the cleanup rule. Traditionally, you always have a cleanup rule at the bottom, and you want it to block traffic. And the idea here is that this is your final rule in the YACL, And if you hit this, you want it to generate a log so you know that you're not matching it elsewhere. So what we'll do is we will go ahead clean up this there for now. And we're going to go ahead and create a group for our checkpoint stuff. Just going to say that this is checkpoint firewall gateway. And we just add the objects there. So you see how it keeps track of whatever recently used. So I open up DC2 and that's there. I didn't open up the first one there. That's why we don't see it. So I'm going to go ahead and add this guy. And then I'm going to go ahead and add, if I can find it. There it is. So we can go ahead and add the objects as we want. So let's go OK. And of course, we can add a color. So what's our color here, Jeremy?
I'm feeling sea green. Let's go with that one.
Ooh, that is definitely the right choice. Now we're going to add another group. And this one is going to be our checkpoint management. And this is going to be our management center. And this can be orange. And what we want to do is we want to make a rule that's going to basically just say that the management center can talk to the firewall and vice versa. So we're going to add two rules just to make this clean. And we're going to say we want the management center to talk to the firewalls, and then we'll just do the opposite. We're going to not do any VPNs yet. We don't really care about any applications, so let's leave this be. So we're just going to say we're going to accept the traffic. And we're going to log it. Now we can give this a nice name. So you can say something, if you wanted to be nice and formal, you could say allow checkpoint communication created by Donald Robb at March 4th, 2022. Of course, this won't last there. People will. Oh, they didn't like the name.
Nope. Yeah, I got
too clear.
those descriptive names are very helpful.
Comments, actually, oops. We're just going to say CP communication. There. It's basically the same verbiage. And then you can also add comments in there and add more detail if we really want to, but we're not going to bother at this point. So this now we have our rules, and we're not quite ready to push it yet. What we're going to do is create another network. And we're going to say this is my management LAN. And this is going to be 10, 30, 10, 0, 255, 25, 25, 0. And this is just so I can manage things. And for simplicity's sake, I am just going to add that to these existing rules. Now, hopefully my computer doesn't get locked out when we push this rule. Maybe. So when we're done all this, what we can do is publish the rules, and this is going to commit all the changes in the database. And that means that if I was to get disconnected from the Smart Center, I won't lose all my changes. There is nothing more frustrating than making a bunch of changes and then you get disconnected and then you have to start over again because you lost everything.
Yep.
We can give it a session name if we want to. We can give it a description. Playing with others. So at this point, we just saved it to the database, but it's not actually on the firewall. What we do is we go install policy. And because I didn't define any policy targets, this is just going to automatically install on all the firewalls. And if I want to, I can make this more specific. So we're just going to go install.
How long does it usually take to push it to the firewalls and install it?
That was really quick, but this is some pretty powerful virtual machines. So
Okay.
that took a few seconds, but normally you're looking at about like 5 minutes, like 2 to 5 minutes to actually commit something on a real firewall.
Right, right.
Because basically what this does is this generates like a gigabit file, and then that pushes that file to the firewall. So that can take a while if there's a real WAN involved and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So at this point, we should start getting some logs in a perfect world. So I'm going to go logs here. There we go. Oop. And Checkpoint actually has a really nice log viewer. It's probably one of the best in the industry in terms of functionality or whatnot. So if we want to look at what this is, we can see that this is blocking some net BIOS traffic there that happens to be on my WAN, and it's hitting it because it's basically just hitting the cleanup row I made. So pretty nice. You can get more detail if you want to, and pretty slick. You can see the match rules, and you can use this to jump around if you need to. You can copy information. They did a nice job on this. They've always had a nice log viewer. Definitely better than say Palo Alto there, where if you add a refresh counter, it breaks if you're typing a command. I'm sure you encountered that once or twice.
I have. Yeah, this one does actually look nice and clean, and yeah, very viewable, easy to look through.
You can use queries here, so you can say like, I want the source, and you can type in what you want there. You can also click on this. Oh, not this, sorry, that's auto refresh. I omit queries. And this is going to just give you some frequently used rules there that are handy for doing some troubleshooting. So if I wanted to look at, say, the firewall blade, you can start drilling down and adding stuff. You can also drill down this way, so you can go right click, add filter, and say like and. So you can build this out as complicated as you need to there. So when you're searching, it does a pretty good job. Pretty good. So what I did is I created a relatively simple Ansible playbook that is going to be pushing some objects there, just so we don't have to wait around there. So what I've done is basically I've just made the checkpoint automation stuff, and what it's ultimately going to do is create a bunch of network objects in DC1 and DC2. So you can see, and I've already pre-chosen that the color is going to be blue, very important.
Does that have to be specified?
It doesn't. Just,
just bonus, yeah.
Yeah, and then basically what I did is just define these in the variables. So if I go here, you can see I've defined a bunch of common networks that we might want to run. So if that looks okay, I should be able to go to my Ansible host, which is just my WSL. And I'm just going to pull my latest updates and then just push this. And when this is done, we should start seeing these pop up in the management center. So you see this starting to pop up here.
Right. Cool.
So you can do automation stuff with Checkpoint. It actually has some pretty nice features for when you get more advanced. So for example, you can tie this with various clouds. So for example, I've connected this to my Azure, and as I add Azure networks there, it's going to automatically create objects for my virtual networks in Azure.
Oh, nice.
I can also do things like AWS. We can tie this to VMware NSX if we want to. We can connect it to vCenter and pull my port groups down if we really felt like it. You can tie this to Kubernetes, which is probably a bit more advanced. IAC can use this for a source of truth, so it connects to EICE there and gets all the identity information for you. So they've done a pretty good job of extending this. So I go vCenter, for example, and we can say this is VCSA31, and we're going to try connecting to my vCenter. Yeah, it looks promising. So I'm going to go ahead and publish this. Now what I can do is I can use this to permit various virtual port groups that I have in my ESX environment there. So it's a nice way to make your network a little bit more automated. I can also do some queries. So I can, if I want only certain resources, I can go back to cloud, query. And what we can do is just make a bunch of query rules. I can say I'm looking for particular IP addresses, and then I can use this object. So that's fun, but let's take it back a level. So let's go back to the networks we just created. And what we can do is we can just make a rule for our LAN. So we'll just say this is DC1. And we'll call this allow phones. And we can just drag these in, or we can make a group if we want to. So if I just want to say allow phones, then go ahead and allow it. And then for destination, I can say I want any destination, or I can say I can make a bunch of rules there. So I can say like I want everything but private IPs. So we can make a group for that. We can say does not have those? Okay, we'll just make them. What we'll do is just make a network, and we'll say this is private 10-8. Oh, apparently something to ask. And then we'll create another one for the other networks. So private 172.16.12. 12, and we may as well do the other one.
While you're doing that, I got a question about testing out Checkpoint in a lab. Do you know if Checkpoint offers like free or trial images to use?
Yeah, so this is actually a trial. I have full access there, but I believe you can download it without any access. I'm not 100% sure if they locked that down, but I think you can.
Okay.
If it is locked down, you can consider playing it with cloud, so you can spin it up in Azure or AWS and use it that way. And then the actual images, they all come with 7-day licenses. So it gives you a little bit of time to play with.
Nice. Okay, so yeah, if you guys are interested in trying out Checkpoint in a lab, yeah, you can try it out for free.
Ish, maybe.
Free-ish, yeah, depending. Yeah, if you go the cloud route, you might have to pay a bit for that.
Yeah, I just had to submit a $7,000 expense bill for a bunch of resources I had to make in AWS. It's funny, my boss talked to me like the day before. It's like, hey, can you cut down your expenses? I'm like, sure, I'll try. So what we can do here is this would be a standard phone network. This doesn't really make a lot of sense. We're just playing around. But basically, we're saying that the phone can talk to anything on the LAN. You can also say, like, if this is one of those internet phones where you just plug in, they dial to the cloud, all you can do is just right-click this and say negate the cell. And now what we're saying is anything that's not private IP is allowed.
Oh, that's interesting.
Then we can say we're going to accept. You can also do more functionality in certain situations, but usually you're just going to accept, drop, or reject. Basically, the difference between drop and reject is that if you drop it, it drops the packet. If you send a reject there, the firewall says, hey, I'm not allowing this packet. Thank you very much. And if you're something like Nmap, it's going to say, oh, I guess that port is there. So it's so if you care about that kind of thing there, it can take away from your footprint a bit. So we have that, and we'll add another one. We'll just say that we want to copy this, and we'll paste this. We'll say below, and we'll say this is LAN, and we're just going to say that we want LAN, and we're just going to say that the LAN can talk to the LAN. So anyway, you can build a few rules, and when we're happy with it, we can push it. And when we try and push the rule, it's automatically going to publish it for you, so you can save a step. And you can see I've done 20 changes. So you can investigate what that is there by just going session. Actually, it'll be over in manage settings, sessions. Yeah, so you can view the sessions and you can see what the changes are by clicking here. And it'll give a nice little change report about what objects I'm creating, that kind of thing there. Now, the nice thing is, as we push this there, it will save the state there. So if I mess up and you come in the next morning and you just want to undo everything I did there, you can just load the previous session into the database and push the rules. So that is handy as a time saver. So we're just going to go ahead and push this as is. And then we're going to go ahead and push this. So this should be pretty quick again. So we have basic connectivity, but what we don't have is LAN access. And in fact, what we're going to do is just change this a bit. We'll just say this is allow internet. There, that makes more sense. So you can drag the objects around. It works pretty well. Sometimes my mouse has some issues, but that's not Checkpoint's fault. And you can do what you need to do here. Now, one thing you're going to need to do to actually get things on the internet, if this was real, is we need to edit the object so we have NAT. So NAT is done in two ways. We have an auto NAT, where we go here and all we say is add automatic NAT. We tell it if we want to have a static NAT or a hide NAT. Hide means that it's just going to hide behind the public IP. Or we can hide behind a particular IP address if we want to. Or if we want a static NAT, we can go ahead and add this in here, and that's going to do a NAT translation for us. Let's do a hide NAT. And what this means is that, and we'll do it for phones too. Boop. So what this means is because the policy targets are set the way they are, the NAT is basically just going to, right now it's installing on all gateways. So if this object plans to find its way to DC2, it's going to be automatically NATed on DC2. If we don't want that, we can hard code this and say that, hey, we want this only on a particular firewall. and that's going to basically just bind that object to that data center essentially, for at least as far as NAT's concerned. We can also make a full-on NAT policy. So we can see here that it's automatically added rules for the ones I just enabled. But we can also make custom rules there if we want to have more control over a NAT, so that if we want to allow particular services in with particular objects and particular ports, all we would do is create a rule, and we would pick our source, our destination, our original services, and then we would translate this to something. And if you're familiar with like the ASAs, this is very similar to the double NAT, where you can NAT both the source and the destination and the services, so you can change whatever you want there to conform with whatever checkpoint's using, or whatever you need for the checkpoint. Make sense?
Yep, makes sense to me. As
Cool,
always,
cool,
everyone,
cool.
let us know if you have any questions. I think this is probably new stuff for a lot of people watching. So
Yeah, you can definitely get lost in the weeds for this kind of stuff.
Yep.
So
But-
what we can do, yep.
I was just going to say, if you guys have used a firewall like this before, it'll probably be easier to understand this sort of stuff, because all firewalls have sort of similar features, although you configure them in different ways.
Yeah, well, it's kind of the argument where it's always safe to recommend the CCNA, because if you can learn Cisco to a CCNA level, you should have a pretty easy time learning other vendors, because at least the concepts are out of the way and you know how to implement it somewhere.
Yep.
That's where something like the Network Plus falls apart, because they don't actually teach you anything. So, yeah, at the end of the day, you know the gist of how OSPF works, but you don't really have the reference of how to configure it.
Right.
So anyway, so we created some networks. If we wanted to, we can create some hosts too. So if we look, it's created a host for my domain controller, because we did that identity awareness. So if I want to, I can rename this to what it should be. Now we can see we can do NAT as well, and there's also some advanced features. So if we want to, we can add SNMP information to get so that it can be queried, and we can also tell Checkpoint what kind of server this is. So I can say it's a DNS server, and this is going to let me drill down and say, okay, well, you can only talk to these domains, and we can lock this down a little bit more. Typically, it's usually not worth doing this, but it is an option for you. So I'll check that before I break something. So those are objects. So the other side of the coin, aside from the role base, is the other features. So if we go back over to our firewall, we can see we have added things like the application control and the URL filtering and that kind of stuff. And then we can also choose to do more advanced features, like do we want the IPS? Do we want anti-bot detection? Do we want antivirus? Do we want sandblocks? I don't know if this will work on a demo. We'll find out. But what this is a sandbox for it can. Yeah, it won't let me do that.
Too bad.
But what you can do is, in a real setup, is that you can basically have suspect files sent up, and then it will basically detonate those files in the VM, and then basically it'll try and see if there's a virus in there, and if there is, it kind of kills it. So that's fun. So we'll just go OK here. Okay, I need to create my office mode apparently. We'll talk about that in a minute. So basically, office mode is their VPN pool. So I'm just going to go ahead and add this because it's complaining. So when you connect to your VPN with remote access there, it needs an office pool to be allocated. And basically, this is just a subnet that you define that will pass addresses. You can also do DHCP if you really want to, but I find most people just work with pools when it comes to VPNs. And then I believe I need to go down here. So you can see there's a lot of checkboxes. Checkpoint has their own certifications, just like people like Cisco do. So you can definitely get lost in the weeds if you're looking at all the little checkboxes you can do.
Do you have any checkpoint certifications?
I did. I used to have all the R65 certifications. That is, that'd be like 10, 15 years ago, old now.
Okay.
We're on R81 now, so you can tell it's been a little bit of time.
Right.
I was thinking about renewing my checkpoint for nostalgia there, and then I kind of got busy and never got around to it, but one day. So you see this failed. But yeah, it looks like they revamped their certification program quite a bit, so I have to look and see what they have now. Bet you this failed because it's a secret. Okay, well, usually it gives you some nice information. Not that time though. Usually what that is that there is a quirk where you have to install the threat prevention policy first. So we're just going to go install here. There we go. And then if we try and install both of them, now it should work. Maybe. Thinking. Nope. It's upset with the access policy. Oh, empty address translation rule. Oh, you know what it is? Because I started showing you how to do NAT, and we never actually configured anything. So it's
right.
So let's just go back over to NAT, and we'll just delete this. I don't think we need to NAT anything in this little preview. All right, let's try this again. Okay, so we have our roles pushed, and basically, as we would add things like an email server, that kind of thing, we would start building it out there. So we might do something like add a host. And we'll just say this is mail 31. We'll say 10, 30, 14, 51. This doesn't exist. And what we can say is we want to have another section, and we'll call this inbound. I cannot spell inbound rules. And what we can do is just say allow SMTP from our source. This will be anything because we want it from the internet. And then for this, we'll point to our object. And then for services, we would add a service here. We're just going to say Good enough. Nope, I put the wrong button here. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go to services. I'm going to go to TCP. And you can see there's a bunch of predefined services. We're just going to find SMTP, and we're going to drag and drop it. There we go. Drag and drop never lets us down. I'm going to copy this. We're going to have a rule. And that's basically all we need to do. Now, if we want to actually have a proper NAT, we'll show you what that looks like. So we'll go here, and we'll actually make an add rule. So let's say this is allow internet, and we can say original source and original destination. We're going to say is the firewall cluster. Firewall clusters, because basically this is where our WAN IP is going to be in a real environment. And then we're going to say original services is going to be SMTP. And then we're going to say the source is going to leave it as original. Destination is going to be our, oh, no, I ruined it. Oh, no. There. So now basically we're saying that if someone comes in and goes to our public IP address with looking for SNMT, we're going to translate that to mailhost 31. And we're going to keep the same port service, but I can change that if I really wanted to. So that's NAT in a nutshell. If we look at IPS, there's not a ton that we need to worry about, but this is usually pretty optimized. But what we can do is add exceptions, and we can also control the rule base if we need to here. So if I go IPS protections, so these are all the IPS rules that are pushed down on the current checkpoint rule base there. And this usually updates once a day on a default. You can customize as you want to. But here's where we can figure out, like, hey, this bind attack is going to cause me some issues, so I want to make sure this rule is inactive. And then I can customize different profiles. I can make exceptions if I need to. If I want to do HTTPS inspection, we can go ahead and configure those rules. And we can go from there. One thing that is a little bit above that we want to talk about, but it's worth mentioning, is that we can basically create the concept of a layer. And a layer is kind of like a context in ASA or Palo Alto doesn't really have an equivalent that I can think of, but essentially it's a way of having separate rule bases for different objects. So you can basically, it's kind of like a VRF, but for rules itself. Like this is kind of like a VDC.
Okay, cool.
So you can carve out what rules are there, and you can basically have custom views and different installation targets, and you can carve out the management side of the networking a little bit better. So that's basically the non-VPN stuff. Now we can also do things like updates, so we can push updates if we want to. We can also use some of the other tools. So for example, licensing is everyone's friend.
Always a good time.
Yeah. So you can see, and of course it opens on my other monitor. So this is what's called Smart Update. And what this does is lets you push updates if you need to. You can get information about what's installed there. So if I get gateway data, it's going to get some information about what's actually installed. And we can use this to push new packages if we want, if we have a bunch of firewalls and we just want distributed connection. Licensing, this is basically just going to be the trial license right now. But if you had other licenses, you can go ahead and apply them here. And this is how you would license the firewall. You would add them to the Smart Update and then push it out. Word to the wise, if your license runs out, you can't actually open this tool directly. And therefore, you can't add the licensing. So what you need to do is you need to open up directly from the program files, the actual binary, and then it'll let you log in. So anyway, that's Smart Update, not very exciting. You also have Smart Provisioning. Okay, it's going to open up. Yeah, it opened up in the other browser. Okay. Waiting. Okay, I'm dragging it back over. There we go. So this is basically a way of keeping your firewalls consistent. So what you do is you make management profiles. So you would pick something like Gaia, and you can also use this to support the smaller office appliances. So we can say something like test. And here's where we can push things like DNS settings and that kind of stuff. And we can use this to basically just have some basic configuration between the two or the several different firewalls. It's not the most advanced thing in the world. Like you can't easily enable like OSPF on this, but you can push things like static rows, and it's decent. It's okay. It's okay. There's also a whole new product line called Smart Endpoint, and what this does is basically your endpoint security. So if you wanted to do things like enforce whole disk encryption in your network or do 802.1x, that kind of stuff, you could go ahead and do that when this loads. Thinking. Drag it over. You can see it thinking.
35%.
This might take a bit. I never opened this in this installation. But basically, it's a completely different GUI. Oh, you know what? I forgot to initialize that. So you initialize it by going to here, and then you want to go install database, and then install. This basically pushes the database down so you can use these kind of features, and then from there you can log in. But we'll just pretend we saw it. Okay.
Finished pretty quickly.
Yeah. All right, let's try this again.
Yeah.
Any questions so far?
Let's look at the chat. Someone asked about what's that? An ACAR test? You see that?
A card? Oh, I don't have the chat up. By the time when I look at it,
yeah, fair enough.
Third angle, and I kind of look like an idiot when I'm trying to answer a question.
Said, can you run an ACAR test on this and show how it works with AV, antivirus, I guess? I'm not sure what...
Oh, I know what he's talking about. I could, but I don't actually have a LAN set up there, so it wouldn't really get anywhere.
Okay.
But he's talking about this. I use it for firepower all the time, so if you go to... virus. That's one. If you go here, this is how you test things like anti-malware.
Okay, got it.
If you try and download, like save this as a file, like my Cisco WAMP will basically stomp it out of existence. So, but it's basically just relatively harmless code that they basically made it look like a virus, and then all the antivirus people use it for testing.
Okay, cool. So Smart Endpoint doesn't want to load, huh?
Yep, I just have to pretend it's there. Anyway, it's just a different console, and it lets you push things like endpoint clients and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, that is that. Now what we can do is quickly have a look at some VPN options. So what we can do is go to our security policies, and then we want to go VPN communities. So the way Checkpoint works is you create a VPN community, and then you add the endpoints you want, or the firewalls into it, and then that kind of controls the domain. It's very friendly for Checkpoint stuff, not so friendly for non-Checkpoint stuff. What we do is we just say VPN lab, and we choose between the star topology and a mesh topology. So star means that we have a center gateway and satellites connect to it, and mesh means that everything connects everything together. So in our scenario, it probably makes more sense to be a mesh instead. So we're just gonna click on the mesh community, like so. Gotta pick a color. I'm feeling red. Yeah. And what we do is I forgot to enable VPN on the other one, so we'll come back to that. Go okay. And we'll go over here. And then if I go enable VPN, enable this, and then I'm probably going to need to adjust the link selection. So we're going to use the WAN IP for the VPN. And we'll do the same thing over here. So you can see it's fairly straightforward, but when you get into it, there's a bunch of little quirks here and there that might make it a little bit annoying to work with if you're not familiar, or even if you are familiar with it. So anyway, we created these two gateways, basically saying we're going to run a VPN together. Now we can say we want all traffic to be encrypted, or we leave it to the rules. We're going to leave it to the rules. The methods, so we're just going to say we want IKE version 2. We want to run with SHA-256. We want to run group 14 is good enough. And we'll say we want AS56 and 56. We'll do PFS, group 14. So we basically pick how we want our encryption to work here. Now, I was saying if it's both checkpoint and it's both managed by the same smart center, we just do it this way. If it's something like a Fortinet that we're pairing with, then we need to make sure all the settings match on the other side. So tunnel management, if it is checkpoint, we can go ahead and enable permanent tunnels. And this is a proprietary feature that basically just keeps the tunnels up always rather than waiting for internet traffic. Interesting traffic, sorry. You can also choose how we want the tunnels to be made. So we can have one per subnet pair, which is the standard. You can also choose to do it per gateway and per host if you're insane. I've never seen anyone want to do this, but usually it's like that. Maybe you just want a really high number of IPsec tunnels. I don't know, but you can do that. You can exclude services if you really want to. Now, if you're using external members, like my Fortinet or my Firepower stuff, we can use a shared secret, and this is going to be your pre-share key. If you're using Checkpoint, it's automatically going to use a certificate-based VPN, and it's going to be handled for us. So we can just leave this blank, and the VPN should come up unless I messed up my lab connectivity, which is entirely possible. And we can also do things like change how we want NAT. So I'm just going to make sure there's no NAT in our gateway, and we want to make sure that we're compressing the VPN tunnel. So I should be able to push this. Yeah, we'll see if it blows up. It blew up.
Yep. There's always a feeling of suspense when you push configuration changes. See if they work.
The host. No, it doesn't like my net rule again. Valid object into. Oh, I know why. So it's failing because I made this and I left it on policy targets. So to fix this, what I can do, just say only install this on this firewall, and then that way it makes sense because I'm saying if it's going to this destination, then we want it there, and it doesn't work for the other firewall. So push this again. Do-do-do.
Still not happy with that. Anyone who's worked on a firewall before, you've experienced this.
Yeah. You know what? We don't need that net rule.
Okay. That'll fix it.
Yeah, when in doubt, delete it.
Yeah.
anytime would be good.
Yep. Also, anyone who's worked on Juniper devices, since they work differently than Cisco devices, you first prepare the changes you want and then commit them, and then it'll give you some error telling you why why I can't commit them.
Yeah, I know some people love the commit-based configuration, but there is a trade-off there.
Yeah, for sure.
Just thinking. Okay,
There we go.
So what we did here is we have created a VPN based on basically all the addresses behind the cluster. So basically we did it based on this topology information. So basically these subnets here. What we're going to do is create, or I think my Ansible created a group for me. Let's just see if it worked. It did. Look at that. So what we're going to do is edit this. So we're going to say that first of all, our transit network here, we're going to edit our malt anti-spoofing. And we're going to say that we are using DC1. So basically, we're just saying that any routes in this there are expected to come for that interface, and we're not going to break anything. Second thing we're going to do is change our VPN domain to be that group. So basically, we're saying anything in this list there should be added to our VPN. Jeremy, we never changed the color.
Oh no,
man.
All right. I got this. Let's go with olive.
Olive, okay.
It's on the list there.
I guess that that kind of fits with Israel. They like olives.
Do they?
Maybe, I don't know. Probably.
Any Israelis in the chat, please confirm.
Yeah. If I'm spreading fake news, please let us know. All right, so we're going to override this. We're going to go specific, and this is going to be DC2. And then we want to change our VPN domain, be DC2. And this is where some of the pain points come in when you do multi-vendor, because everything in that VPN domain is going to get advertised to the VPN. It's not as surgical as like the access points that you get in like Cisco or the or access lists you get in Cisco or the other stuff there. So sometimes you have to deal with the fact that you're pushing like 30 subnets, and you only might want a couple on the VPN tunnel. So that is. Did it actually push, or am I just confused? I'll push it again. Why not?
Yeah. There you go.
All right. So now we have a working VPN in theory. Now, I don't know if my lab is entirely set up to support this, but we're just giving an overview anyway. So if I go new tab, I can go tunnel and user monitoring. And then it opens on my other monitor. There we go. A bit more down, and boom. So this is basically a nice way of monitoring your VPN connections. So you can see that we have one active tunnel. Now, if I check under tunnels here, we can see permanent tunnels. So this is down. I may need to fix my virtual environment for it to come up. So let me just see here. First of all, we'll check our logs, make sure we're not blocking anything. So we're going to get rid of all this. And we can see that Address spoofing.
There it is.
I knew that happened at least once. So that is happening because. Okay, I don't really care about that. That's not it. It is causing address spoofing. I wasn't lying to you. So we're going to search for VPN. And we can see that it's trying to create the VPN tunnel. So it's exchanging. Wait, if I go back over here. Oh, I forgot to make an access rule that actually permits anything. That probably helps. So let's go back over here, and we will add another section. And this is going to be called VPN because I'm very creative. And we're just going to say that we want one to two. And we'll create another one. And we'll call this 2 to 1. Any service is fine. And what we want to say is the VPN. We're just going to explicitly say we're going to use this tunnel there. Break this down. There we go. So with that said, we should be able to push this. It makes me paranoid when it's that fast.
Yep, looks good. Succeeded.
Does it? But that's quick. The people who have seen this for the first time, they don't understand. Usually it's like press a button and walk away for 5 minutes.
Yeah. Pushing all these changes to firewalls usually is not that quick.
Yeah. You know, the worst one was, I don't know if you ever worked with the Microsoft ISA firewall.
No, I haven't.
Consider yourself lucky. There was actually no commit button or push button. It actually had to, the firewall would check in with the management center every like X amount of time. And then it would then decide to download the rules.
Oh, wow. That's pretty bad.
Yeah, you can wonder why Microsoft got out of the firewall game. It's not quite up yet, but I might have a WAN issue in my lab here. I'll see if I can quickly fix it, but otherwise, is there any questions?
Nope, nothing at the moment.
Okay.
We got Wally who passed his CCNA. Congrats.
Ooh, good job, Wally. So if I look at my network adapters here.
Yep. And for those of you who are studying for a CCNA or past your CCNA, firewalls are definitely something you should look into at some point because it's pretty much expected that these days a network engineer is able to configure, troubleshoot firewalls, etc.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, it's kind of being a junior is kind of an interesting kind of thing there. Like it's a bit like being a lottery sometimes because like your resume is basically the same as everyone else there. You don't have anything to differentiate yourself there. And honestly, if you're like a hiring manager like me, when I did interviews more frequently, it would be like, it's like, oh, okay, I was gonna, unless like as a senior where I really care, it's gonna be like, okay, we'll just pick the first 5 names on the list and what's gonna be your kind of thing. Like you're not gonna deep dive a blank resume that worked at A&W and then has a CCNA maybe.
Right. Yeah, it's a little hard to differentiate.
Yeah. What I wanted to do was select logs. And when. And if we look here. What we're going to do is just hop on the CLI here. And answer the question. By the way, there is CLI for troubleshooting. It's just not something you can like add an object or something with it. You can do it with the API though if you're but I'd recommend doing something like Ansible if you want to play around with that kind of stuff. There's one. Let me check the other.
Is there information you can get from the CLI that you can't view in the GUI?
Oh yeah, that's plenty. Like if you want to see like the cluster status, for example, I gotta go expert. There's basically they protect the fancy commands under another password. They can do things like the cluster status and do more troubleshooting, that kind of thing.
Right.
And there's a VPN. They have the VPN tool, so you can like see the active SAs and that kind of thing. So there's plenty of information you get here if you really want to. You can also reset the security relationship on the firewall so that you can re-register with the Checkpoint Management Center. You can also unload the firewall rules if you're troubleshooting. So if I go show interface, show IP interfaces. Oh wait, I mean it's not running at all. So expert mode is basically just the Linux shell. So you can poke around with it. There's 30, and if I try to ping, what did I configure this out? No one knows. You've been a load there. That might be part of the problem. So this might be a good example of how to unload the firewall rules. We'll go back over to our thing here, and then we can start wrapping up. So what we can do is, if we feel this problem with ways, we type firewall unload local, and firewall unload local. At this point, I should be able to back over here. And if I try to pull this again in Fury, I should get my list.
In theory.
I did say in theory. just gonna random say that you are the guest. Apparently my second cluster isn't healthy. So what we're going to do is we're just going to all right, what we're going to do is we're just going to reset the relationship, and then if that doesn't work, then we'll just run away and start a Friday drinking.
Sounds good. Or
So
Saturday morning drinking for me.
Well, it's 7 p.m. somewhere, right? So what you do here is this is where you can do things like reset the relationship or disable clustering or more advanced stuff. So we're going to say that we want to reset the SIC. Just the yes. Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is what I'm typing. This is a one-time key, so you don't really need to have it be super complex because you're only going to use it the one time to get things moving. Do the same thing on this guy. Config. I'm just doing the same thing over here, not bothering moving the menu. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so we'll go back over here. And what we're going to do is just go to the cluster members and say communication reset. So now I type in the one-time password. See, trust is established. We will try this over here. Oh, over here. Like so. Okay, it doesn't want the cluster definition, so I'll take that out. Take that out. Now if we try this again. I think this is a bug.
Yeah, it could be.
See, it's saying that there's different IPs, so there is an update for this, so maybe it's not entirely to blame. What we'll do we'll just quickly move on, I think, and then we can make a more elaborate lab if you want to take this up on another night.
Sure.
So anyway, that is in theory how a VPN works. Usually the interfaces don't all disappear. So if you're watching this checkpoint and you might want to not have this happen on the live stream.
Make the interfaces not disappear.
Yeah. Consider this me filing the bug report. But anyway, what you can do some audit log stuff. We briefly looked at Ansible, but you can automate things. You can use Terraform too if you want to provision objects. All in all, it works fairly well. You can do things like you can customize this as much as you want to. There is right now it's Windows only, but they are working on making a web interface. I don't know how functional it is yet. I never tried it, but it does seem to be the way things are going there. So hopefully they keep all their good stuff there, and it's not like VMware where they had a really good tool and they had a really crap web interface until just now.
Mm.
But that is, I think, about all we should talk about, unless there's a specific question
Cool.
or anything particular you want to see.
Just one question from Kumbesh. She said, "Is there a set of predefined policies apart from adding one by one?" I'm not sure if predefined policies would be useful since it depends on, the environment, right?
Yeah, there's not really predefined, or at least not I'm aware of. There is best practices though. So, like for example, what I should do under here is I should add another rule, and I should call this the stealth rule. And what you basically do is you say anything to our environment there, we're just going to drop. And the idea here is that everything is permitted above for the management. And then after that, you don't want any more firewall communication. So that's that. The cleanup rule is also best practice. This is just to make sure that you're cleanly, when you hit the end, you're cleanly breaking things there, and you don't have to figure out like, where's this rule and why is it, it just makes things nice and predictable. Other than that, use section headers and whatnot. There is implied rules that are kind of worth looking at. So if I look at a applied rules here. These rules are built by default, and this is basically how Checkpoint can talk with each other. So you can see here how there's things like example. So like for example, there's the checkpoint stuff. There is here we go. ICMP request. So this is enabled by default. So there's some cases there where you want to disable your implied rules. So what you can do is you can go under global. And then what you can do is you can uncheck the ones that you don't want to apply to you. So for example, if you don't run RIP, you don't need to have an applied rule that allows RIP. But in terms of pre-stage rules, I'm going to say no. But if you do a lot of setups there, that's where something like Ansible is really handy, because if you look here, what I've done is I basically just added my networks, and then what I do is I just loop through them. And then for the network objects, a little bit more complicated, but I take all the objects and add them into groups. And I also have other ones for configuring the guy there. So if you wanted to, you can make one for access rules and get that all configured if you do that. But generally speaking, if you're unless you're setting up a firewall from scratch, it's usually not worth doing that there. Usually what happens is you inherit a mess.
Yeah.
So usually what happens is Jeremy, I'll quit and go somewhere else there, and Jeremy will get this job of managing this demo network. And then you'll be like, what the hell? Why is he allowing mail like this? This doesn't make sense. Didn't the idiot know that he should do this? And,
Yeah.
And then usually you have to do a long cleanup process there, because you can't just say, I'm just going to delete this there, because, hey, that's your mail server. You got to make sure that you can safely clean it up. And nowadays it's really nice there because they have hit rules, so you can see when rules are actually being used. But back in the day, they were before the hit rules there, you had to take a lot of measures to make sure.
Ideally, when configuring the firewall rules, you include a comment or some sort of description
Yeah, that's what I
indicating what
started
it's
doing. They
for.
changed it up a little bit, but so what I started doing is I put the comment in the name,
Right, right.
but nowadays it's additional rule info. So you type in like
Yeah.
created,
Oh, yeah, yeah. The ticket
uh,
number requester too. Interesting.
yeah, that kind of thing, and that's where you can type it in a little bit better. But very nice tool. You can also search for things. You saw me do it a couple times there, but if you have like 1,000 objects in here, it's nice to be able to use the Object Explorer, and then you can search for things like I want 10, 30, 10, and you can figure out what objects are actually in here. And when you have nats, you have any nats? When you have nats, they will show up here so you can see all the public reviews. So it's a nice system. The licensing's a little frustrating, I'm not gonna lie, but I guess that's true of everything.
Yeah, yeah, basically.
But yeah, I don't know, pretty slick. In terms of learning, just for the sake of learning it, it's a good firewall, but it's a little bit less than mainstream these days. Like where it's used a lot, but they've lost a lot of ground to like Palo Alto and Cisco and Fortinet in terms of deployments there. But it's a pretty slick firewall.
Yeah, so if you're just looking to study for the sake of learning, you wouldn't necessarily recommend Checkpoint as your first step into firewalls.
I would probably recommend something like Fortinet or Cisco's Firepower, like something that's nice and integrated.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it can get a little bit convoluted when you're trying to figure out, like, is this a Gaia problem? Is this a Checkpoint problem? And then the fact that you only have like, I think it's a 14-day trial when you first install it, and that kind of stuff there. So using something like Firepower is a little bit more friendly usually.
Right, right.
FortiGate, they're a nicer product. Well, not nicer, as they're a fair product, but getting hands-on licensing is a little bit painful for them sometimes. Because what they do is you can get a free trial where you get like a 1 CPU for the FortiGate there, but if you turn on certain features, it just melts.
Okay.
Yeah. So depending on what you want to do, FortiGate is sometimes generous, but sometimes kind of like, what are you doing, guys? But just say, make sure you do your CCNA first before you consider this kind of stuff. Ideally, you want to be at least on the CCNP path for general knowledge. Like, even if you think you don't need CCNP, like, there is still OSPF here. There's still routing, there's BGP here, there's VPNs and stuff like that. There's a lot of routing. See, I got validation errors. I don't even know. Go to rule. Oh, I forgot to finish doing this. Oh, that's why things are. So is that actually defaulting? So services is none instead of any? That's probably why I'm having some weird VPN issues. So all these should be any. What if this is going to work before we hang up?
Yeah. So now if you say you get your CCNA, start working on CCNP, and you enter a company that uses firewalls, which companies do, then you'd of course want to study that vendor. So if your company's using Checkpoint, learn Checkpoint.
Yeah.
If it's Palo Alto, learn Palo
Right?
Alto.
Like, you don't want to randomly learn, like, say, Azure, and then you find out that, it's an AWS shop. It's like, okay, well, that's just necessarily.
Right.
Or if it helps, it's the bare minimum of helping. I'm just curious to see if this fixes the things. Yeah, I didn't even know. Before, it always defaulted to any, which makes sense, but is defaulting to none on this new version for whatever reason, which doesn't quite make sense. They're basically saying, I want a rule that matches nothing. It's like, okay. I mean, it's more secure that way, sure, but try this one more time, then we'll
Yeah.
go here.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess they can take my expired CCSP evac. I'll try one last thing here. We're just going to close this and log in again. Thinking. And of course, it opens in the other window. All right, last chance to dance. Boom. Loaded. So,
All right, let's see. It's going.
there
we go.
Gonna finish strong.
Nice.
Let's see. Do I have my interfaces? Ooh, look
Oh,
at
nice.
that.
Got interfaces.
Let's just see here. Let me. Oh, 50% of mouse. What's on here? 40. Oh, that's fine. We're just going to go ahead and delete this test network. There, never happened. So there's one thing about the fact that Gaia and Checkpoint are two different things. There is that you can occasionally get your interfaces out of sync, and that can be annoying.
Right.
And that's why you need to do things like do that interface syncing that I was showing you. So let me just quickly see here if this is still opened.
Oh, it's up. There we go.
See, there we go.
Strong finish.
I never lost faith. Okay, I definitely lost faith. But anyway, that is the basics of Checkpoint. If we do this, if you want to continue doing this and we talk more, we could talk more about the more advanced features like routed VPNs and that kind of stuff. But there's definitely a lot of toys to play with here.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said at the beginning of the stream, I am going to be making some Checkpoint videos myself. So maybe after I make those videos, we can look at some of the more advanced features
Sure.
with Donald another time. Cool.
Sounds good.
All right. So I guess I'll return to our cameras. You can stop your screen share.
Oh, yeah, that's probably a good idea. Stop sharing. Confirm. Done.
All right, there we go. All right, so today, oh, 1 second. I'm showing my OBS. Yep.
See, it's
Okay.
not just me, bro.
Yeah. Plenty of boomerang all around. All right, so today we looked at some checkpoints. Just curious, I think some people would like to know, who do you consider the current industry leader in terms of firewalls?
It's a complicated question. I consider Cisco the industry leader because they have the unmatched end-to-end visibility for everything. It's like Cisco has appliances to secure your email. They have appliances to secure your web browsing. They can secure your DNS with Umbrella. They can secure your east to west traffic in your data center. And someone like Palo Alto, they might have a firewall that's better in some features and so give and take that way, but they don't have the whole holistic property yet. They want to get there and they're working on it, but it's kind of when you have the whole end to end, it's kind of hard to beat. If you're talking individually, Checkpoint is really hard to beat for a firewall. If you don't mind the price and the licensing and that kind of stuff there, it's really a top tier firewall. Not very friendly with multi-vendor. Maybe we'll
Mm.
talk about that next time. But if you're all checkpoint all in, you could do worse. Palo Alto, my love-hate relationships with them, and Fortinet is pretty good for the SMB kind of tier, and
Mm.
usually that's about as far as I take them.
Okay, fair enough. So, as you always say, more Cisco.
More Cisco.
More Cisco. All right. So, seems there aren't any other questions. Or there is one question for me.
Oh.
I'll answer that. Hi, Jeremy. Is
Okay.
NetSim available for NRC labs? Do you recommend it? So you're asking about Boson NetSim. For CCNP, I first of all recommend CML. Get Cisco CML. Make your own labs using real Cisco OS there. But I do like Boson NetSim because I also do like working through pre-built labs. So if you have the extra funds, go for it. But first of all, make sure you have Cisco CML for your labbing. And I guess you'd agree with that too, right, Donald? CML is the way to go for CCNP.
Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time recommending CML or not CML, NetSim because I mean, for the money, you can buy pretty much. You can buy a CML for the licensing. Like NetSim
Yeah,
isn't
true,
necessarily
true.
cheap. And if you're doing CCNP level stuff there, like you're doing more features that the hand holding is kind of over because really NetSim's a glorified packet tracer,
Mm,
and they have to manually add all the commands or like it's not running in iOS. So you get some weird things there where maybe you want to run a fancy automation command that you saw when Jeremy and I were talking, and it's not there because it's not real iOS. So
right,
real
right.
is better, especially if you're trying to be professional or an expert, like real as in virtual or at least, but like and those kind of things are unless you get on a cheap deal. I don't really like it. No, I've never seen the labs for NetSim. Maybe they are really good, but I I'm more like CML and other solutions all the way there. So
Yeah, for sure.
it's hard to justify the money.
Yep. Fair enough. Back a few years ago when I got my CCNP, I did use Bullseye NetSim. It's a good product, but CML is king for sure. Like use real
Yeah. I mean, great
iOS.
practice test. I mean, I'll never fault Boston for the practice
Oh yeah,
test.
the practice test. XSIM is definitely like the best out there.
Yeah. I mean, when the CCNA first came out, they missed the mark pretty hard, but
Mm.
they're good now.
Yep, yep. Okay. All right, so I think we'll wrap it up. Where can people get in touch with you? I put your YouTube channel in the description, so the Packet Thrower does, of course, have a YouTube channel, but where else should people find you?
Yeah, YouTube. I occasionally make videos. I probably should return to doing that eventually. Um, I'm frequently on a lot of the Discord communities for networking, so you
Yep.
can see me Network Shack a lot. David Bombo, the Cisco Study Group. If it has some kind of Cisco conversation, I'm usually there.
Yeah, he's Donald's not hard to find in the networking Cisco community. Pretty
And you can add me on LinkedIn if you really want to. I'll usually hit the accept button unless it looks like a spam or something like that. But
right, right.
I'm usually pretty easy to find.
Awesome. All right, so I think we'll wrap up the stream. Thanks again, Donald, and hopefully in a
All right.
couple months we'll do another one.
Sounds good.
Yep. All right, enjoy your Friday night.
You too.
See you.